The first written whispers of Ubar come not from archaeology, but from scripture. In the Quran, Surah Al-Fajr, the dawn, verses 6 to 14 mention a powerful, arrogant people known as Ad, who lived in a place called Iram, described as a city of towering columns. Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with Ad, Iram of the lofty pillars, the like of which was never created in the land? According to Islamic tradition, these were no ordinary people. They were builders, merchants and rulers, engineers of their time. The Quran says their pride led them to spread corruption across the land, ignoring divine warnings. As a result, they were punished with a screaming wind that lasted 7 nights and 8 days, erasing them completely. But the Quran is just the beginning. Welcome to Mystic Explorer. We hope you enjoy the video. Let us know in the comments what you think. Later Islamic historians such as Ibn Kathir and Al-Tabari elaborated on the legend. They wrote that the Prophet Hud was sent to warn the people of Ad. He pleaded with them to abandon idolatry and greed. Instead, they mocked him. Then came the storm. Many scholars interpret this screaming wind as a sandstorm of catastrophic magnitude, something that could bury entire cities. Others suggest it could have been a combination of wind, seismic activity and subsidence, natural disasters that ancient peoples would have interpreted as divine wrath. But the idea of a city vanishing into the earth isn't unique to Islam. In the book of Genesis, chapter 19, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed by fire from the heavens because of their wickedness. The parallels are clear: moral failure, divine warning, total annihilation. Even outside scripture, similar legends exist. In the Hindu epics, cities like Dwarka are swallowed by the sea. In Central America, Mayan cities like Uxmal were said to vanish due to divine abandonment. The tale of Ubar fits into this global pattern, a golden city brought low by arrogance. But what makes Iram or Ubar stand apart is this: it may have actually existed, and some believe its bones still lie beneath the Arabian sands. Bedouin oral traditions have carried the tale for centuries. Elders speak of a cursed city buried near the edge of the Rub al Khali, the empty quarter, an area the size of Texas and one of the most inhospitable places on earth. They describe sinkholes that appeared without warning, strange ruins poking out of the dunes, echoes of stone buried in silence. If their stories are even half true, then the legend of Ubar is not only about divine judgment, it's about a real place, forgotten by time and remembered only by the wind. To understand why Ubar might have existed, and why it mattered, you have to follow the scent of smoke. Not just any smoke, but the sacred curling plumes of frankincense. In the ancient world, frankincense was worth more than gold. It was burned in temples from Babylon to Rome, offered to the gods of Egypt, and prized by kings, priests and physicians. Its resin, collected from the bark of the Boswellia sacra tree, was believed to purify the soul, ward off disease, and connect the living to the divine. This wasn't just perfume, it was power. And its source? A narrow region in southern Arabia, what is now Dhofar in Oman, and parts of Hadramaut in Yemen. This small strip of desert coast held the key to a trade that moved incense across continents, and they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. Matthew 2:11. Even the Bible acknowledges frankincense as a gift fit for a king. It was one of the 3 treasures carried by the Magi to the newborn Jesus. By the first millennium BCE, frankincense had become a global commodity. The Egyptians used it in their embalming process. In fact, residue from frankincense has been found in the burial chambers of pharaohs like Ramesses II. The Romans burned tons of it annually in imperial temples, and in India and China it was a key trade item via maritime routes. But none of this trade was possible without the incense road, a 2,000-mile overland network of caravan trails stretching from southern Arabia through the Negev desert, Petra, and on to Gaza and Damascus. At its height, this road moved 3,000-ton shipments of incense per year, carried by massive camel caravans that could stretch for miles. And somewhere along this route, Ubar was said to sit like a jewelled gate, It was a nexus, a checkpoint, a commercial fortress where caravans stopped to resupply, pay taxes and seek protection. Control of such a city would mean control of the incense economy, an ancient version of owning the keys to oil or rare earth metals today. Ancient Greek geographers like Ptolemy even placed a city called Eubarita, a name eerily similar to Ubar in southern Arabia. His maps were rough, but the name lingered. Archaeological evidence from sites in Oman shows that by 1000 BCE, coastal cities were thriving off maritime and overland trade. Pottery from India, coins from Rome, and even Sabaean inscriptions have been found in these desert settlements. So why don't we know more about them? Because the desert doesn't just preserve history, it hides it. Wind shifts, sand covers, cities vanish. And what's left behind is just enough to spark a legend. If Ubar did exist, if it was a centre of wealth and incense, it makes sense that it would loom so large in the memory of those who survived its fall. Because whoever controlled Ubar didn't just control a city. They controlled the gateway to spiritual commerce, to imperial rituals, and to the lungs of empires. And as we'll soon see, that kind of power rarely goes unchallenged by men or by gods. Long before satellites scanned the desert from space, the mystery of Ubar was passed from mouth to ear, through campfire stories, tribal elders, and the wind-blown words of the Bedouin. But by the early 20th century, the legend had drawn the attention of outsiders. Among them was T. E. Lawrence, the British archaeologist, soldier and writer, immortalized as Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence referred to Ubar as the Atlantis of the Sands, a term that captured both its mythic allure and its frustrating elusiveness. Though he never searched for Ubar directly, his writings helped stoke public fascination with a lost Arabian civilization. The real trailblazer, however, was Bertram Thomas. In 1930, Thomas became the first documented Westerner to cross the Rub al Khali, the empty quarter. At over 250,000 square miles, it is the largest uninterrupted sand desert in the world, with dunes reaching heights of 500 feet, and temperatures that can exceed 130 degrees Fahrenheit, 55 degrees Celsius. Thomas wasn't just charting terrain, he was listening. Along his journey, he heard a recurring legend from the Bedouin of a city buried by God's anger, where the earth had opened up and swallowed towers, merchants, and all their riches. One tribe spoke of a sinkhole so vast that an entire tribe could vanish within it. These were not just metaphors, they were geographical warnings passed through generations. In the years that followed, British explorer Wilfred Thesiger also ventured into the Rub al Khali. Between 1945 and 1950, Thesiger made several grueling crossings, accompanied by Bedouin guides. In his book Arabian Sands, he recounts hearing tales of Ubar, though he considered them symbolic rather than literal. But then came something more concrete, maps. Early Arab cartographers like al-Idrisi, writing in the 12th century, marked mysterious cities in the deep interior of Arabia, including names like Wabar or Iram. These names seem to drift between myth and geography, hinting that Ubar may have been a composite of real locations, distorted by time and legend. European mapmakers too had taken a swing. On a 17th century map by Johannes Blaeu, a city called Obar appears on the southern edge of the Arabian Peninsula. No one knew where the name came from, only that it matched the phonetic trail of Iram, Ubar, Wabar and Eubarita. By the mid-20th century, the hunt for Ubar was not just about archaeology, it was about identity. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, newly founded in 1932, and the Sultanate of Oman were asserting national sovereignty. Finding Ubar would be like discovering a buried cornerstone of Arabian greatness, a cultural treasure equal to Troy, Petra, or Babylon. But despite the explorers, the maps, and the legends, Ubar remained elusive. Too many leads ended in mirage, too many paths were swallowed by sand. Until one day, an unlikely alliance of archaeologists, satellite engineers, and dreamers looked not to the dunes, but to the stars, and they asked, could we find the past from orbit? By the early 1990s, the hunt for Ubar had gone quiet. Dozens of expeditions had come up empty. Maps were too vague, oral stories too fluid. The Rub al Khali, with its ever-moving dunes and vast, trackless spaces, had swallowed not just cities, but hope. But then something unexpected happened. An amateur archaeologist and filmmaker named Nicholas Clapp, intrigued by the legend of Ubar, asked a bold question. Could modern satellite technology find something ancient that the human eye had missed for centuries? Clapp wasn't alone. He partnered with scientists from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, including Ronald Bloom, a radar imaging expert. Using data collected from the Space Shuttle Endeavour during its 1992 mission, they analysed images taken by Circe/XR radar, a system capable of penetrating dry sand and revealing subsurface features. What they found changed everything. Faint white lines appeared, dozens of them, like ancient scars running across the desert. These weren't natural. They were fossilized caravan trails compacted by centuries of camel traffic and now invisible to the naked eye, and they all seemed to converge on a single point in the Dhofar region of southern Oman. That point was a place called Shisr, a remote and forgotten oasis. Clapp and his team immediately organized a dig. What they discovered beneath the shifting sands stunned even the skeptics. At Shisr they uncovered thick stone walls, some more than 10 feet wide, tower remnants, at least 8 large structural bases, pottery fragments dating from 2800 BCE to 100 CE, artifacts from India, Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean, suggesting long-range trade. But the most dramatic feature was a massive sinkhole, nearly 100 feet deep, at the centre of the ruins. It appeared that the city had partially collapsed into an underground limestone cavern, possibly due to structural weakness or seismic activity, exactly the kind of event that could birth legends of a city being swallowed by the earth. News headlines were quick to claim victory. "Lost City of Ubar found," read Time magazine. National Geographic called it a major archaeological discovery. The Omani government soon designated the site as a heritage zone, and researchers from around the world flocked to it. But not everyone was convinced. Critics argued that Shisr was not a grand city but a caravanserai, a desert fort used to house and protect traders and their animals. While it may have been important, they said, it wasn't the fabled metropolis described in the Quran. Still, even the skeptics agreed. Shisr was ancient, Shisr was rich in incense trade relics, and Shisr had collapsed, just like the legend said. So is Shisr the long-lost Ubar? It depends on what you believe. But one thing is certain. For the first time, the legend of Ubar had left the realm of myth and entered the world of maps, data, stone and dust. The legend says that Ubar was destroyed by the wrath of God. The Quran speaks of a violent wind, 7 nights, 8 days, the earth opened, the city vanished. But how could such a thing happen? Literally. To answer that, we turn not to scripture, but to geology. The site at Shisr, uncovered by Nicholas Clapp's team, sits on top of a vast karst limestone formation. Karst landscapes are formed by the slow dissolution of soluble rock, usually limestone, by slightly acidic groundwater. Over centuries, this creates underground voids and caverns. Eventually, the ceiling of one of these voids weakens. It can collapse suddenly, creating a sinkhole that swallows whatever is above it. Homes, roads, temples, cities. That's exactly what researchers believe happened at Shisr. Evidence shows that the centre of the site had collapsed, dragging down stone walls and structural supports. The main sinkhole, called the Well of Birds by locals, is over 30 metres deep and was likely larger in antiquity before infill. To a modern geologist, it's a karst collapse. To a 4000-year-old caravan traveller, it was divine punishment, proof of prophecy, the wrath of the sky. But that's only part of the story. The region is also one of the most wind-eroded deserts in the world. The Rub al Khali, or empty quarter, sees near constant sand movement. Some dunes drift several metres per year. When Shisr's towers fell, the sand did the rest, burying what was left in silence. This double threat of geological collapse and aeolian burial explains how a place could physically vanish in a single generation and be forgotten in just a few more. And there's another layer to this mystery. Recent research by geophysicists from Sultan Qaboos University in Oman suggests that minor seismic tremors occur in the region, often undetectable by humans. These tectonic movements over time could destabilize subterranean cavities. So imagine this: a crowded desert fort filled with merchants, incense, livestock. A tremor strikes, the ground gives way, walls fall into the void, a sandstorm rolls in, the survivors scatter. The next morning, nothing but dust. It's not hard to see how stories of God's wrath could emerge. Natural disaster or supernatural judgment? Perhaps the two were never as separate as we like to think. When the team at Shisr uncovered stone walls, imported artifacts, and a collapsed tower complex, the media hailed it as a triumph. The lost city of Ubar has been found. But many archaeologists and historians urged caution. The truth is, no ancient inscription has ever been found at Shisr that calls it Ubar. There are no stone tablets, no temple dedications, no city seals. So is it really Ubar or something smaller? Here's where the scholarly debate begins. Many experts believe that Ubar wasn't a single city at all, but a name used in different ways over centuries, a moving target, both in geography and in meaning. Let's break it down. Theory 1. Ubar as a region or trade network. Some scholars argue that Ubar may have referred to an entire region or confederation of settlements in the southern Arabian peninsula, not one location. In this interpretation, Ubar wasn't a city like Petra or Babylon. It was more like a zone of cultural and economic power that included Shisr, Wadi Hadramaut, and other incense route forts and way stations. Ancient travellers and mapmakers, especially those from outside Arabia, may have collapsed many towns into a single mythical city in their minds, just as early Greek writers sometimes mistook the Nile Delta for a single city. This theory aligns with Ptolemy's 2 end-century CE map, which marks a place called Iobarita in southern Arabia. But scholars now think Iobarita wasn't one place. It was a transliteration of multiple settlements misrecorded by second-hand sources. Theory 2, Ubar as a symbol of wealth and hubris. Another theory suggests that Ubar is less about geography and more about what it represented. In this view, Ubar became a composite legend, built from memories of collapsed forts, abandoned caravanserais, and real disasters like the sinkhole at Shisr. Over generations, storytellers compressed these events into one grand narrative, a single city swallowed by the earth for its arrogance. This is how myths often work. Consider Atlantis, first described by Plato around 360 BCE. Modern scholars believe Plato wasn't referencing a real city, but a moral lesson, an allegory about pride and divine punishment. Could Ubar have followed the same path? Theory 3. Shisr as the last known Ubar. Still, there's a middle ground. Some researchers propose that Shisr wasn't the original Ubar, but it may have been its last iteration. A final outpost holding the name, echoing the legacy of a larger, older city lost deeper in time. Evidence suggests that Shisr was continuously occupied from at least 2800 BCE to the early Islamic period. That's a 3000-year time span, long enough for names, meanings and myths to evolve dramatically. Think of how Rome once meant an empire, then a city, and now a global religion. Names carry weight, even as their geography changes. So, what was Ubar? Was it a single glorious city, a region of incense wealth, a warning parable passed through time? Maybe it was all of these. Maybe Ubar was never meant to be found in stone, because it survives in something stronger. In stories, in memory, in the human need to explain how even the greatest things can vanish. Let's imagine for a moment that Ubar was never meant to be found, not in stone, not in maps, but in meaning. Because sometimes a city isn't just a city, it's a symbol. Across human history, civilizations have created powerful allegories to explain what happens when greatness turns to greed and wealth becomes weakness. Ubar and the pattern of judgment. In the Quran, the people of Ad, who inhabited Iram, the city of pillars, are condemned for arrogance and disobedience. They transgressed in the lands and spread corruption, so your Lord poured upon them a scourge of punishment. Surah Al-Fajr, 89, 11-14. This isn't just a story about sand and wind, it's a story about moral collapse. The people of Iram were given warning, they ignored it, and their city was erased. The Bible gives us a strikingly similar framework in Genesis 19, where Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed by fire for their wickedness. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grievous. Genesis 18:20. Like Iram, these cities are punished not by armies but by divine forces. The elements themselves, fire, wind, sand, the wrath of heaven made visible. This pattern, pride before the fall, is global. In Hindu tradition, the golden city of Lanka is consumed in a holy war. In Mesoamerican myth, cities are swallowed by the gods for sacrilege. In Plato's Critias, Atlantis is destroyed for becoming too ambitious and corrupt. These stories weren't just history, they were warnings, echoes carried forward through generation after generation. Why cities fall in stories. Cities like Ubar become powerful metaphors for the human condition. They represent our highest achievements, architecture, trade, empire, but also our greatest weaknesses, greed, arrogance, spiritual amnesia. That's why Ubar survives even if the ruins are uncertain. Because Ubar isn't just about what happened, it's about what always happens. History shows us the pattern again and again. Rome fell from within. Angkor Wat was reclaimed by jungle. Cahokia, once the largest city in North America, vanished mysteriously before Europeans arrived. No matter how advanced, no matter how fortified, when cities forget their purpose, they become monuments to their own downfall. Memory outlasts stone. Even if the towers of Ubar are dust, even if no GPS pin can place it precisely, the story remains. And stories, unlike stone, are indestructible. They adapt, they travel, they survive, because human beings need stories like Ubar, not just to remember the past, but to warn the future. What happened to Ubar? Maybe the same thing that happens again and again when we forget what made us great in the first place. Ubar may be buried beneath thousands of years of sand, but its story is alive and growing louder. Today, the ruins at Shisr, whether the true Ubar or not, are preserved as a heritage site under the protection of the Sultanate of Oman. The collapsed limestone cavern, the reconstructed towers, and the remains of incense storage rooms are now open to the public, a rare blend of ancient mystery and modern rediscovery. But Ubar's legacy goes far beyond a tourist site. The discovery of Shisr marked a turning point in the field of archaeology. For the first time, space-based radar imaging was used to directly support an ancient legend. The NASA-assisted expedition to find Ubar opened the door to a new generation of research, using satellite data, LiDAR and AI to scan dense jungles, dry deserts and even ocean floors. Since then, lost Mayan cities have been mapped in Guatemala. Petra's underground structures have been revealed via satellite. And in 2023, researchers using remote sensing discovered previously unknown Sumerian canals hidden beneath modern farmland in Iraq. Ubar, in a sense, helped launch the era of digital rediscovery. For the people of Oman, Ubar is more than a curiosity. It's part of national identity. The story of Iram of the Pillars is included in school curriculums. Local tour guides share the legend with travellers. In Salalah, the capital of Dhofar province, entire festivals are themed around the incense trade. The rediscovery of Shisr reinforced Oman's claim as a cultural heartland, a place where ancient Arabia didn't just pass through, but began. Even the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Land of Frankincense, recognises the broader significance of this area. Not just Shisr, but also the caravan trails, port cities like Khor Rori, and incense trees of Wadi Dauka. Ubar has become a bridge, connecting ancient faith with modern pride. Ubar also lives in fiction, video games and film. In Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception, players search for Iram of the Pillars beneath the Rub al Khali. In fantasy literature, Ubar is often cast as a hidden city of ancient knowledge. Documentaries on the Discovery Channel, BBC and National Geographic continue to revisit the story. It's a rare thing for a place that may or may not have existed to leave such a vivid footprint in the collective imagination. But Ubar resonates because it's about more than geography. It's about the fragility of greatness and the lure of forgotten knowledge. In an age of climate shifts, political unrest and collapsing infrastructures, the story of Ubar feels eerily modern. A city that thrived on commerce, trade and excess, brought low by a force it didn't fully understand. Is that just ancient history, or a warning? As we push deeper into deserts, dig beneath oceans and scan the skies for signs of the past, Ubar reminds us some legends are only waiting for the right tools and the right questions. So, was Ubar real? The evidence suggests yes, but not in the way legends often insist. A caravan outpost, a cultural node, a city fortified by trade, and perhaps destroyed by the very earth it stood on. Maybe Ubar wasn't a golden metropolis paved in incense and towering columns. Maybe it was something more enduring, a symbol of human ambition, of spiritual warning, of memory surviving where stone cannot. Across this 35-minute journey, we've followed incense trails across empires, descended into sinkholes beneath forgotten oases, and sifted through scripture, satellite imagery and sandstorms. We've seen how Ubar may not be a single point on the map, but a constellation in human history, formed by pride, loss and curiosity. So here's your final reward, a fact few people know and you've earned it. In 1992, while mapping Shisr, the same NASA radar system also uncovered the remains of a 2,000-year-old riverbed running beneath the empty quarter. That's right. One of the driest places on Earth was once home to a flowing river. This ancient waterway likely fed the frankincense caravans. It may have sustained the people of Ubar, and it could even explain how such a city rose in the middle of a desert. Ubar didn't just vanish. It may have been built on the bones of an ancient climate that turned against it. Now that is the kind of twist only deep time can deliver. Thank you for watching. If this journey inspired you, subscribe for more lost history, ancient mysteries, and stories that refuse to stay buried, because somewhere beneath the sand, something is always waiting to be found. To answer that, we must understand the world Ubar belonged to. The Arabian Peninsula was a crossroads of civilization. Its trade routes brought wealth and ideas from Africa, Mesopotamia, India, and beyond. For generations there were no ruins, no inscriptions, only whispers. But in the 1990s, an unexpected explorer entered the story. Nicholas Clapp, a filmmaker with a fascination for Arabia's past. The Quran describes the people of Ad as mighty and arrogant, their punishment total erasure. Oral traditions passed through Bedouin tribes echoed this tale, a city swallowed by the sand, towers lost to the wind. Geological studies revealed that the fortress at Shisr collapsed into a sinkhole. Beneath it was a vast limestone cavern, a city literally swallowed by the earth, the very image found in religious lore. It's here that myth and science meet. Could a real natural disaster become the root of a myth? The desert preserves stories just as it preserves bones and bricks. Some scholars argue Ubar was never a city, but a region, a name for the whole incense-producing territory. Others believe the true Ubar still lies hidden, buried deeper under centuries of shifting dunes. Clapp turned to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He asked if satellite data could reveal ancient caravan trails across the Arabian sands. The theory? Centuries of frankincense trade carved invisible roads into the desert, hidden from the eye, but not from space. Alternatives abound. Some researchers point to Al-Ahqaf as the site of Ad. Others cite the Ubar craters, thought to be meteor impacts, as a possible source of destruction myths. What's undeniable is that Shisr was a major settlement. Layers of pottery and architecture point to thousands of years of activity. The well still holds water. This was a place of endurance, not illusion. Whether or not Shisr is the Ubar of legend, it's part of a greater truth. The blending of historical memory and spiritual teaching. A real place becomes a lesson. A collapse becomes a parable. Like Atlantis, Ubar endures in our collective imagination. Books, documentaries and even video games reference the lost city of the sands. It stands for mystery, for lost wisdom and for untold treasure. In recent years, Arabian archaeology has accelerated. From LiDAR scans to drone surveys, new cities and ancient paths are being uncovered in Saudi Arabia, Oman and Yemen, once thought to be blank deserts. Ubar teaches us a timeless lesson. Civilizations rise on trade, ambition and belief, but they fall from greed, neglect or nature's wrath. And when they fall, the sand covers all, but never forgets. Today, we live in glass towers. We build systems as mighty as any ancient city. Yet the same truths apply. Wealth fades, empires collapse, and time buries all things, even names. Ubar may have been real, it may have been many places, or it may have been a warning wrapped in a tale, but its power remains, because what we seek is not just ruins, but meaning. Out in the Rub al Khali, the wind still whispers across the dunes. Somewhere the bones of a city may lie, or maybe just the echo of a people who once believed they would never fall. So was Ubar real, perhaps? But the better question is, what made us look for it in the first place? A thirst for truth? Or a longing to remember that even legends are built on something real?